Dude.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, October 13th, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Pretty exciting times here at Rolla J Studios in beautiful legal Portland, Oregon. My piece in the Cincinnati Enquirer, or at least the piece in the Cincinnati Enquirer about me, is now up. If you follow my Twitter feed at Radical Rush, you can find the link to that. Big thanks to Ann Saker for her write-up on who is Radical Russ and why does he support Ohio's Issue 3. That's the big topic for me over the next 3 weeks. We are 3 weeks away from marijuana legalization happening in the state of Ohio. And if I'm going to be the only major drug law reform person that's promoting this, then so be it. I'm the guy who always supports legalization. And coming up later on the show tonight in the Radical Rant, I'm going to tell you why I always support legalization. You will never catch me voting on the same side of a marijuana legalization initiative as Kevin Sabet and the cops. We'll talk a little bit about that in the Radical Rant. Also coming up on the show today, we've got more highlights from the Oregon Hemp Convention that took place this weekend. We're going to start things off with Joy Beckerman. Yes, Joy Beckerman from Hemp Ace International and Ben Nadler as well. Ben Nadler is the CEO of Simple Vape LLC, so we'll be hearing from him. We're also going to get an extended discussion from Sid Maurer, the former Eugene television anchor who was fired for her marijuana metabolites. She's got a 10-minute talk that we'll give to you after the 20 after break. And then, as I mentioned, we have more from the Oregon Hemp Convention with Bradley Steinman. He's an attorney with Green Business Law. He'll be talking a little bit about the changes to the law in hour 2. And also in hour 1, we'll get to hear from Mark Wimpy, who's the CEO of a company that makes Polyhut, a really cool pre-made turnkey solution for your cannabis growing. So we'll hear from him and all these folks from the Oregon Hemp Convention coming up on today's issue of the Russ Belville Show. Episode, I should say, not issue. Issues are magazines. Speaking of issues, though, issue 3 is on the ballot in Ohio. And my piece yesterday on marijuanapolitics.com has certainly ruffled some feathers. You can find that piece at marijuanapolitics.com, and it's entitled, let me pull that up real quick. That's today's. Let me get to the other one. Shame on Drug Reformers' Silence on 2015 marijuana legalization in Ohio. It's the rant I did yesterday where I went into depth about how Marijuana Policy Project and Drug Policy Alliance never met a medical marijuana law they couldn't compromise on it. All sorts of things we have to accept as compromises when it came to medical. But when it comes to legalization in Ohio, why, the wrong people getting rich, that's just a bridge too far. We may talk a little bit more about that in hour 2 as well today. Plus, we'll take your phone calls at 84-420 radio. That's toll free at 844-207-2346. We welcome all callers. If you disagree with me, especially, please call in. And we will be polite and respectful if you are polite and respectful. This is the place to have the discussions we need to have here in the cannabis community as we continue on the route to true marijuana freedom through incremental legalization. That's the only way it's going to happen, folks. Stay tuned. The 420 Radio News is next. I'm Radical Russ. We're back right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with our Shoutcast stream for all internet-enabled media players. Go to rad-r.us/420shout or just click the Shoutcast icon below the live radio feed at 420radio.org.
I know a thing or two about drug dealers. They'll sell anything, anywhere, to anyone. They don't check IDs. They don't care what's in the poison they push. They control the streets. Failing to reform marijuana laws means the drug dealers win. They stay in business, and we surrender our streets. It's time for responsible reform to legalize, regulate, and control marijuana. So we're in charge, not the criminals. Vote yes on 3.
Imagine life without taxes. Let New Era Certified Public Accountants, NewEraCPAs.com, handle your Cannabis 280E and tax strategy. Get your business prepared with New Era CPA's Cannabis Finance Bootcamp. NewEraCPAs.com, with years of experience in the industry, we are one of the nation's leading accounting firms for growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies from Washington to California. NewEraCPAs.com. At midnight, July 1st, 2015, adult marijuana prohibition came to an end in Oregon. Immediately, over 400,000 adults who consume cannabis responsibly were no longer criminals. This is what freedom sounds like. Brought to you by Portland Normal. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Replays of 420 Radio News are embeddable and shareable from our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/RadicalRuss. Now, the marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, October 13th, 2015. With the battle over marijuana landing on Ohio's ballot for the first time next month, a new poll conducted by WKYC and Kent State University shows 56% of the state's voters support allowing adults to possess small amounts of marijuana for personal use. The results also show 32% are opposed, with another 10% who don't know how they feel yet. Among the results, 84% of Ohioans say they would support allowing adults in Ohio to legally use marijuana for medical purposes if their doctor prescribes it, plus or minus 4%. The WKYC Kent State poll also asked the participants about their voting plans for the 2 ballot issues connected to marijuana. 54% plan to vote yes on Issue 2, the Anti-Monopoly Amendment, while 26% were undecided. 58% plan to vote yes on Issue 3, the Legalization Amendment, while 10% were undecided. Democratic presidential frontrunner Hillary Clinton is facing pressure from marijuana advocates ahead of the first debate tonight. Dan Riffle, director of federal policies at Marijuana Policy Project, said, quote, "Hillary is probably the worst of the bunch on marijuana reform, and even she has said states should be laboratories of democracy when it comes to legalization," end quote, comparing Clinton to the other Democratic candidates. By contrast, former Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee signed a marijuana decriminalization bill in his state. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley endorses rescheduling marijuana so people caught with the drug would face lesser penalties. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont has talked about the racial injustices that occur during marijuana arrests. Former Senator Jim Webb of Virginia made drug policy a key issue in his push for criminal justice reform. Marijuana advocates say they would like each of the candidates to clarify their positions during the debate. Washington state troopers are ramping up efforts to enforce a new portion of the state's marijuana law, which makes it illegal to have an open container of pot in your car. The law went into effect on September 26 and is similar to the state's alcohol open container law. The law states that marijuana must be in its original sealed package and stored in the trunk of your car or behind the back seat. It also extends to pot-infused edibles. Driving with an open container of pot is a traffic violation that carries a $136 fine. Troopers say that they are seeing an increasing number of drivers with marijuana. The Washington Traffic Safety Commission pushed for the change so that the state's rules governing marijuana would more closely resemble those for alcohol, which prohibits unsealed or partially consumed containers of alcohol in the passenger cabin of a vehicle. Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine has returned to the state after a recent business trip to Colorado. DeWine says he went to Colorado to learn about the consequences of marijuana legalization and how to implement the law if Amendment 3 passes. DeWine says law enforcement officers, medical professionals, and educators all told him, quote, "You guys are crazy if you bring this to Ohio. You guys are just crazy," end quote. Passing Amendment 3 would mean marijuana could legally be consumed by any Ohioan above age 21. DeWine added, quote, "The marijuana of the 60s and 70s was very different than this marijuana. This marijuana basically carries a much bigger wallop. The THC content is significantly higher," end quote. Responsible Ohio Executive Director Ian James says this is even more reason to legalize marijuana. Passing Amendment 3 would allow for the regulation of pot and require labels so consumers know how potent each product might be. Denver police report there have been 835 marijuana-related crimes in the city since 2012, including armed robberies, aggravated assaults, and an arson. But marijuana supporters contend many of the crimes in the list have only a peripheral relation to the legalization of the drug in Colorado. The list includes crimes like car theft, shoplifting, and a violation of a court order, which makes the police list highly suspect, said Brian Vicente, a partner at Colorado's top marijuana business law firm, Vicente Cederberg, LLC. Vicente scoffed at the suggestion that a car break-in would somehow show that marijuana is causing a crime. The concern, Vicente said, is that police or city leaders will use these questionable statistics to show marijuana legalization is causing crime to skyrocket. This has been your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, October 13th, 2015. I'm Russ Belville.
The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while and share.
I'm sure you've heard about the ballot issue to legalize marijuana, and you're probably wondering, does this plan make sense? How will it make Ohio safer? And what does it mean for me? Go to responsibleohio.com and get the facts.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details. Now we go behind the headlines back to the Oregon Hemp Convention.
And we're going to get things started here on the main stage as well. We've got Joy Beckerman coming up, and she is the president of the Washington chapter of the Hemp Industries Association and president of Hemp Ace International. Let's give it up for Joy Beckerman.
Folks, I'm also very proud to be the Industrial Hemp Advisor for the Northwest Farmers Union. I hope you will visit the Northwest Farmers Union booth here on the wall of the side of the main stage here at the end. $40 to be an annual member of a national farmers union organization along with the Northwest chapter. Northwest Farmers Union consists of Oregon, Idaho, and Washington, and the National Farmers Union consists of 200,000 members nationwide and 3 paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. We have an opportunity here as members of the Northwest Farmers Union, that regional chapter, then to affect policy on a national level. And the Northwest Farmers Union seeks to be a leader on the national level of cannabis and industrial hemp for farmers nationwide. It's my very proud honor to introduce Ben Nadler of Simple Vape LLC, who's going to address you now, and I hope that I'll get to see all of you in the education room at noon for a fascinating U.S. history on industrial hemp and then building with industrial hemp, particularly hempcrete, which is my favorite of all the 50,000 products that we can make out of industrial hemp. It's a mold-resistant, rot-resistant, pest-resistant, and fire-resistant carbon-negative building material. So again, please meet me in the education room at noon. And without further ado, Mr. Ben Nadler of Simple Vape LLC. Welcome, Ben.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a pretty simple message for you guys today that's pretty well understood, that quitting smoking is one of the easiest, simplest things that an average person can do to improve their health and the length of their life. Vaporizing has been shown to be one of the most effective methods for folks to quit smoking. Our company's motto is better health through vaping, and we really do promote smoking cessation through vaporizing both the mods as well as dry herb marijuana. And obviously that's why we're here today. We all love marijuana. We might love to smoke, but we have to come to the realization that it's not healthy for us, and there are other options. We definitely encourage everyone who hasn't yet to try out vaporizing. It's proven effective because you get the satisfying feeling of smoke without having to actually consume the carbon monoxide and tar and other elements that make smoking dangerous. So really quickly as well about our company, if you're a business owner, we'd love to talk to you. Come by our booth number 45. We are a wholesale business, and we offer a very wide range of vaporizing options for dry herb, as well as waxes, oils, and concentrates. And the reason we're great to partner with is we're a hybrid strategy company. We have a very strong online presence. We don't have a retail location, and because we keep our overhead low and maintain low inventory and do drop shipping with our manufacturers, we're able to offer absolutely the lowest prices to our retail customers and our wholesale customers. So we definitely encourage you to drop by, talk to us, take a look at some of the products we have, and also check out our website at simplevape.net. This is our strategy for the short term, is to keep our inventory small, work directly with companies, have reps in your area to educate yourselves and your customers. So definitely do come into contact us. You can take my business card, or my partners as well, Ron Andrews, our company's founder, and we'll talk to you a little bit more about vaporizing and the benefits, and particularly the benefits of smoking cessation through vaporizing. And I was just going to open it up to questions. I didn't have a whole lot to say in the beginning here, but any sort of questions about the vaporizing industry or all the changes that have been happening here lately? Okay, that's perfect. Well, I'll yield my time and turn it back over. I sure do appreciate it. I hope you have a great morning.
There are times where I've fallen off the wagon.
All right, folks, it's 20 after the hour, 4:20 in Denver, Colorado, where I've been checking my Twitter feed, and Scott Gagnon, the Project Sam guy from Maine, is agreeing with all the major reform organizations on their reasons why Issue 3 in Ohio sucks. How does it feel to be on the same side as Project Sam on this issue, guys?
The Russ Belville Show, where we don't change our position on decriminalization in an election year.
As a police officer, I walked a beat, served on the Vice Squad and SWAT team, and became an expert on drug addiction. I saw firsthand the effects of Ohio's destructive marijuana laws. Simply put, they don't work. Ohio spends over $100 million each year on this failed effort. It's time for marijuana reform, so law enforcement can spend their time cracking down on real criminals and making Ohio a safer place for our families. Vote yes on 3.
The Fingerboard Extension has fretted instruments to enhance your creativity. It has new and used guitars and banjos from beginning to high class. The Fingerboard Extension has National Resophonic, Husson Dalton, Larrabee, Heritage and Recording King guitars, and Mike Ramsey, Wildwood, Gold Tone, and Recording King banjos. The Fingerboard Extension also has drum stuff, used gear, and parts. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension, downtown Corvallis, Oregon at 120 Northwest 2nd, or check out the inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com and reverb.com. The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life, conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult marijuana prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat. Back to the Oregon Hemp Convention with Sid Mauer.
Thank you so much, Mark. Please do check out the inside of the Poly Hut here and feel free to ask Mark questions. You can avail yourself of his knowledge all day long. It's my great pleasure, before we get to Mr. Steinman, to introduce Ms. Sid Mauer, former local ABC affiliate morning weekend anchor, who will tell more about the details of her fascinating story, who was terminated in May of this year for testing positive for marijuana. Ms. Sid Mauer, please. It's my pleasure to introduce you.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for being here. Listen to me speak. It's really exciting, and as she just mentioned, this is all still very new for me. I was, up until recently, a local news anchor in Eugene, Oregon, and I am now out of the cannabis closet. Thank you. I released a YouTube video about 2 months ago talking about exactly what happened to me with my career, and now I'm speaking out against drug testing in the workplace because I really think that it truly is bad business. It wasn't just bad for me, it was bad for my news station as well. And I've come to realize in these just 2 short months of kind of speaking out about this that even within the industry of people who are knowledgeable about cannabis, there's still a lot to learn when it comes to employee drug testing. So I'd like to kind of tell you guys more about that, why I'm against it, through telling my story. So before becoming an activist, like I said, I was a local news anchor, reporter, and producer in Eugene, Oregon. And I'm also a University of Oregon graduate, go Ducks. It was exactly what I went to school to do. I was a journalism major, and that is exactly what I wanted to do. I was enjoying my career in local news, but then I was forced to take a drug test to pee into a cup. And because I had THC in my system from previous use throughout the month, I was fired. So even though I was 100% sober every single day I reported to work, I was fired for using cannabis in my free time because of the way that it stays in your system. So many of you may know that many employee drug testing policies discriminate against cannabis users because of the way that cannabis metabolites stay in your system. So let me explain to you how I could be 100% sober and still have THC in my system if people don't understand that, because it isn't common knowledge, as I've realized. So unlike many hard drugs that are out of your system within a matter of days, when you consume cannabis, the metabolites can be stored in your fat or inactively for up to 30 days. So even if you were only affected for a couple hours with the intoxication effects of the cannabis that you've consumed, it can remain in your system and traceable for many, many days afterwards. So to compare it, this would be as if I was drinking 2 nights before and then had to take a drug test 3 days later, and they said, oh, we saw that you had a beer about 3 days ago, so now you've lost your job. That is kind of the equivalent, is they're judging what I'm doing in my free time. And when you look at the facts about marijuana and versus just alcohol, that you can really compare it to a lot of different things that are legal and more dangerous, but alcohol seems to be something that you can naturally relate it to, and to me it just seems outright wrong. So for a little more backstory on my particular drug test, my former newsroom was very, certain companies like to drug test more than others. So for instance, I had a coworker who tripped in the newsroom and she was forced to take a drug test. I had a coworker who bumped her head while she was, filming inside an RV, and she was forced to take a drug test. I had another coworker who was rear-ended himself. Someone tapped the bumper that he was driving in, and he was forced to take a drug test. Well, what happened with me was I was on my way to a live shot where you pop up on the side of the road and you're live for your story. I had 18 minutes to get 15 minutes away. I had no idea where I was going. I was still trying to memorize my scripts, and I was, needless to say, extremely stressed. And so I never got to my live shot that day. I accidentally tapped the bumper of the car in front of me. So the extent of that damage in that car accident was 2 scratches from the license plate bolt of the work vehicle I was in on the bumper of the car in front of me. So because I was in this accident, though, any accident corporate policy, you must take a drug test. because I had worked with my news director and my assistant news director for so long, they knew me, they loved me, I disclosed to them, I have to take this drug test. You know that I come to work completely sober, but in my free time, I do occasionally use marijuana. I think this test will likely come back to show that. So they instantly, it was amazing, they were like completely on my side. My bosses, my immediate supervisors fought for me to keep my job. But because it was corporate policy that I failed the drug test, that they have the ability to fire me, that was the decision. It came down to a corporate attorney from out of state who had never even met me. So even though those who worked with me every day wanted me to keep my job, I still lost my job because of this policy. So that's why I'm speaking out. I really believe that a lot of companies wouldn't hold this policy if they realized how discriminatory it is and how they could potentially be losing out on candidates. I think that we need to explain to businesses right now, I don't know that there's ever going to be a law that says you can't fire someone for testing positive for THC. But if we keep talking about it, keep exposing people to the truth about cannabis and its effects and why it's a safer alternative to alcohol, a safer alternative to many pain medications, then maybe businesses on their own will start to realize, hey, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to have this drug testing policy in place. For instance, take my situation. I was someone who many viewers actually liked. People watched me, I had a following, and like I said, my coworkers who I worked with every day wanted me to keep my job, yet the company policy was to fire me. So they lost out on someone with experience, they lost out on someone who had a name for themselves, which is really important in local news, who had established themselves for several years just because of this policy. So I don't think it was just bad for me, I think it was also bad for them. The only way we're going to get people to recognize that the social acceptance of cannabis is inevitable is if we keep talking about it, we keep educating people, and that is why I shared my story. It was incredibly difficult to come out and talk about this. I've never been fired before in my life, and it was a very humiliating experience, but I wasn't ashamed of the reasoning, and I felt like the reasoning behind it was very wrong, and that's why I felt like I had no other choice really but to speak out about it. So I hope that all of you out there, if you have the ability to talk about cannabis or talk about its effects, educate people, even if it's just one person that you know is adamantly against cannabis, if you can help kind of plant the seed about why they should reconsider their stance. Maybe they'll take that back to their circle of friends who are more, against cannabis and get them thinking. I think that it really is the more people who are educated and exposed to the truth about the healing powers of cannabis, the effects of cannabis, will realize that this should be something that no one should be punished for, that no one should lose their job over, no one should be going to jail for, and that no one should be embarrassed about. So thank you. Yes, you have a question? Yeah.
I do. I just wanted to make a comment. I'm in 100% agreement with everything that you said. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? All right. I agree with what you're saying, and yet because you were using a company vehicle, it does give the company the right to drug test you. Now, I understand what you're saying, and again, I agree with all of the points that you make about drug testing, but I have to side with the company. It's their privilege and their prerogative to be able to test you because you were using their equipment.
You know what? I've gotten that a lot. I totally understand. And that's why I'm not standing up here and arguing that they didn't have the right. They absolutely had the right, and it was absolutely legal, and that is why I believe it's wrong. And that's why I believe that the only way we're going to see this change for it to not be right for them to trust me is if we talk about it. And so I'm talking about why they shouldn't have. They should not have been able to.
But do you think that there's a more equitable way for them to do testing? Let's say you did it 2 days prior to the accident. Are you arguing for more, accurate testing of whether or not you actually had the THC was active in your body, or?
I am arguing that companies should not be drug testing for THC. Period. There is absolutely no reason. If there were, so listen, yes, across the board. So listen, my reasoning for that is if there was some situation that led to this drug testing, say we were reading all the time about stories about people high on marijuana coming and having dangerous situations, causing all sorts of accidents, Trust me, I work in the news, and that is not why drug testing started. Drug testing started in the early 80s because of Ronald Reagan, and he decided to enact it, and all federal workplaces were going to be drug-free workplaces. So that's when the drug testing started.
But there is actually a reason why they drug
We
test.
have to stay on time, and this is for questions and not comments, but thank you very much. And
Great talk there from Sid Maurer. She appeared later on the panel about employment discrimination in marijuana that I was the moderator of. You can find that on my SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/RadicalRuss. When we come back, we're going to give you a little bit of Cultivator's Corner, more from the Oregon Hemp Convention with Mark Wimpy and Poly Hut, a pre-designed cannabis growing trailer that's breaking some new ground. Then we'll end things up with why I always support marijuana legalization, a rant that will probably run into the next hour.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. You're listening to Radical Russ on the Russ Belville Show.
I remember the day Addison was born. She was just perfect. But then the seizures started, up to 1,000 a day from severe epilepsy. Nothing we tried or the doctors tried worked. So we moved our family from Ohio to Colorado to try medical marijuana. Now Addison only has a few seizures a day, and she's a kid again. We want to move back to Ohio, but we can't because her medicine is illegal there. It's time for marijuana reform.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. They say marijuana grows like a weed, but growing high-quality marijuana takes more than just throwing a seed in the ground. Join us as we speak with the most recognized cannabis horticulturists in the world and take your live grow questions in our Cultivator's Corner.
More from the Oregon Hemp Convention.
thank you so much, Ben, and it is so great to see responsible, logical, sensible, and strategic entrepreneurs involved in the cannabis industry. Owning any small business, whether it's widgets, cannabis, or industrial hemp, of course, is quite a challenge. Most small businesses fail, and so it's just wonderful if we can learn from our leaders in the industry who are doing things logically and with some sensibility and sophistication. Well, we also have here with us Mr. Mark Wimpy of Poly Huts. Here to the left of me is a Poly Hut, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Wimpy to tell us all about how we can use this in the cannabis industry. Welcome.
Of course. If you look over to everybody in the audience to your right, you'll see what's called a Poly Hut building. Poly Huts I'm one of the founders of Poly Huts. We created this product for the cannabis industry as well as all types of agriculture. There's many applications for it. One of the most important things with the Poly Huts is that it will not ignite. It's got a R33 rating as you see it, so without any without being finished on either the inside or the out, it holds an R33 rating right now that's waterproof, mold-proof, mildew-proof. It really is the future of indoor cultivation. Now, what's sitting on that trailer there is a model off of an 8x16, which is one of our show specials here. We actually can go up to a 300 by 700 warehouse. Our manufacturing facility is actually built out of those building panels. It's an 18-gauge steel construction. It's a polystyrene bead that's infused into the frame itself, which makes it versatile for everybody to use. The building panels themselves are very easy to put together. We actually ship those in kits with wet stamp plans for all 50 states and Puerto Rico. It's a really neat product. This is our first time out with it. That's kind of a prototype, but we've had a lot of success with it thus far. One of the more important things, and I've noticed being here in Oregon, is that in the winter I see a lot of, since we've been up here, we've seen a lot of hoop houses. And in the winter, what you run into is not being able to keep any type of heat or cold exchange consistent within any type of building here. With our product, and we've actually got a little display in there, I've got a room that's heated up to 150 degrees. The ambient temperature inside that trailer is only 65, so if you go up and put your hand on the panel itself or the window, which is a high efficiency window, you won't be able to feel any heat exchange or transfer through it. They're lightweight, as I stated. They only weigh 68 pounds apiece. One of the neat parts too is the strength and durability of it. Exposed to the elements as it sits right there, it's got a life expectancy of 150 years. This is based on testing we did on our manufacturing facility, where we only broke down 1/8 of an inch over about a 7-year period. The vertical strength of that panel is 20,500 pounds. If you were to take one of those panels, stand them up, you could actually, before you'd see any metal fatigue, it would hold 20,500 pounds. We're actually introducing this product into into Colorado, but I can tell you, being here in Oregon, we're very pleased with the people we've met, and I think we're going to shift our focus here. So we look forward to being around for quite some time. They are manufactured in Arizona. Like I said, it's a neat product. Thus far, without any type of truss system, we can actually do a 12-foot wide roof, which there's pictures on the other side of the display there. But yeah, we're really happy to be here, and we look forward to helping in this industry any way possible. And I hope this can make it more efficient for the cultivators, and looking forward to meet some new people. But yes, sir.
How does your product compare to foam core board?
The difference with mine and foam core is that this is actually infused into the steel. So what happens is when the styrene expands inside that frame, it actually expands inside that frame. It's not a board. It starts as beads, it goes into a press and expands. So what happens is, as opposed to other foam boards, where you glue them together, you put them inside, some people are doing stick or wood, that is a solid unit itself. There's actually a glue that activates inside of that metal frame once the heat gets to it to expand the polystyrene that makes it solid. I mean, we parked a Volkswagen on 2 of those panels and left it for a week, and all it did was dent the foam about 1.5 inches. So it's structural durability. I mean, there was a company out of Louisiana that had locking panels that was stating you could shoot through them. Nothing's bulletproof but steel. But from a security standpoint, which is a question we've actually had come up since we've been here, I would recommend, it's going to be hard to get through that. Okay, the steel's hard to cut through. Once everything's activated, it's a difficult product to get through. But nobody's going to want to leave that unfinished as it is. So any type of metal siding will definitely deter. What we told a gentleman yesterday, if we had to come up with, I'm also a general contractor, but if I had to come up with an idea that would work best for that, for security, I would put chicken wire, and then I would do like a metal siding on it, because then it would make it nearly impossible to get into it. But I can tell you that we spent tens of thousands of dollars in getting our engineering requirements through UES, a couple other places that we needed to. A lot of companies can't take this product into California. We actually can. We have our earthquake certifications, A through C, D, 1, 2, and 3. But one of the neatest things about that product is that I can legally engineer and stamp any plans to go anywhere. So we take a topograph, it goes to our engineer in Alabama, and it can go to anywhere across the country. We're actually working right now to do a relief with the Dominican Republic, because they just had the hurricane over there. They're looking for housing that can be shipped in kits that's easy to put up. We've got a couple house plans for that. An 1,800 square foot house takes, say, 4 or 5 men, women that have a general knowledge of construction, about 5 or 6 hours to put up. So it's a very simple product. Yes, sir.
Have you worked with building the thing out of hempcrete?
No, we haven't. We've actually, I saw that here for the first time. It's the first time I've seen it. I'm actually going to go talk to a couple of people about that. As far as the concrete itself goes, you're talking about like doing a where you would use the panels as almost a mold and insert concrete in between it, or the hempcrete.
Sorry. No, please. You're welcome to talk to me anything about hempcrete. That's my specialty. Hemp technology. Built the first hempcrete.
Oh, cool. Okay. So would that be then? Would he be referring? How does that work exactly? I mean, you guys just would use a standard mold like you would concrete? No, that's okay. No. That's okay. I want to be able to answer questions.
Hempcrete is an infill. It's non-structural, so it still requires timber and steel framing. And you can go anywhere from, we would suggest probably a 12-inch wall around here. Again, mold resistant, rot resistant, pest resistant, and fire resistant. You just fill in the forms. And it really only takes about 12 hours for that first layer to cure, and then you raise the forms up and you're pouring and tamping in. It's fascinating. It looks like oatmeal.
Any other questions?
Talk to us about how it handles high wind storms.
Okay, yeah, that's something I should have brought up. As I stated, the life expectancy is 150 years on it, exposed the way it is. It's actually got up to a 200-mile-an-hour wind rating on it. It will surpass hurricane winds. Depends on where we're at. But as far as the load on it itself, each panel supports roughly 20,000 pounds, as I stated, vertical. It's about 500 pounds per square foot other than that, and that would be laying on its side. We actually just did a test we have a gentleman in Tahoe that's interested in putting one of these up. He does snow removal. It'll actually has a snow load of about 8 feet. So, and as stated, and that's a good point, she did say pest proof. It's the same thing. Termites won't eat through it. It's water, mild, moldu. It's ideal.
About the wind, do you use tie downs?
Well, if you look at the roof panels right there, each individual panel is held down by a 17,000-pound 7-inch self-tapping screw. So really, there's about 100,000 pounds of actual ability in those screws in one single panel to hold that roof down. We drove it up here from Arizona, averaging about 60 miles an hour, 65, and not one of them moved. So the biggest challenge we ran into with making that thing is that the trailer wasn't completely level, so we had to do quite a few modifications on it. But as far as the trailers go, we're potentially thinking about going that direction. However, they're not as cost effective as just putting it on a slab. One of the nice things when it comes to concrete foundation for that is it actually only requires, because of the weight, depending on your area, it only requires a 4-inch slab underneath it. So if you look at the cost, and me being a builder in Arizona, we looked at the cost of actually building one of those as a spec home. And with the amount of savings we could actually make as a builder, we were able to push some of that off to the consumer as well. As far as let's say to heat, for instance, an 1,800 square foot house, the HVAC contractor came in and said, well, you're going to need a 5-ton unit for that. Well, we actually did it with 1.5 tons, and it was more efficient, which tells us we could have brought it down actually to probably a 1-ton unit, depending on the size of the family. So,
how about building on poles rather than a concrete slab?
Yeah, we've actually up in actually it would be eastern Arizona. We've actually built these things on like cabins with a subfloor on posts. We've also done retaining walls and built on top of the retaining walls with the subfloor. So it's very possible. What makes it so neat too is that the fact that it's so lightweight that you have so many different options when it comes to construction with it. We're actually going to be pushing this towards the treehouse industry as well. So, anyone else? Okay, thank you for your time. We'll be right there. We'll be here till 7. Like I said, you can take a look inside that room. It shows that there is no heat transfer. It's probably one of the neatest features about it is it maintains as you get temperatures that fluctuate here in the state. So, but thank you very much.
Great technology being presented at the Oregon Hemp Convention. New turnkey ways of setting up your first legal home grow. 4 plants per household here in the state of Oregon. We're going to take a break for the anti-drug public service announcement of the day, and then when we come back, why I always support marijuana legalization. Always. In the Radical Rant.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. The Russ Belville Show. We're as much like Cheech and Chong as ordinary Americans are like the Three Stooges.
Hey, Mo!
Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Hey, Lindsay? I wish you didn't smoke weed. You're not the same when you smoke. And I miss my friend. I'll be outside.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. This is Radical Russ encouraging you to take a look at the Weed Blog every day. Johnny Green and the staff at the Weed Blog are on top of all the latest developments in the fight to end marijuana prohibition nationwide. You can even get the Weed Blog on your smartphone by installing the Weed Blog app for iPhone and Android. If it's about weed, it's on the Weed Blog, including my original writing. So don't delay. Read the Weed Blog today.
Yep, that's the one. All right. Hey, this is Steve Burke, and you're listening to 420 Radio.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant. Well, folks, now I've gone and done it. My article yesterday on marijuanapolitics.com calling out the national marijuana reform organizations for their neutrality, silence, or soft peddling of Ohio's Issue 3, a legalization amendment that's being voted on in just 3 weeks from today. Well, they're all pissed off about it. They're pissed off that I called them out for the fact that here we've got legalization in a Midwestern state ready to be voted on, and now we've learned getting 58% support in the polls, but the national marijuana legalizers and high-profile legalizers don't want to have anything to do with it because cartel. Because oligopoly. Ooh. So here I am, one of the few prominent marijuana reformers, openly, loudly, and proudly calling on Ohioans to vote yes on Issue 3, the constitutional amendment to legalize marijuana. We've gone over and over all of the reasons it's a legalization from the consumer's perspective as good or better than all the existing legalizations in almost every respect. It's a medical marijuana that's as good or better than all the existing medical marijuana laws. But the wrong people are getting rich, so it can't be voted on. It can't be supported. And to me, this is shocking. I am shocked to be one of the few standing out here trying to make this thing happen, trying to support cannabis consumers and medical marijuana patients in Ohio, while the national groups they've been counting on and sending money to for all these years are abandoning them. So let's not rehash all the why. You know where I stand. But let's get into some of my perspective as to why I take this somewhat unpopular stand among my colleagues. I mean, literally, I got Dan Riffle of Marijuana Policy Project, Tom Angel of Marijuana Majority, and Ngayo Belam from the West Coast, all on my case about this. Very upset with me for my support of Issue 3. But let me address some of their common points of contention by explaining my perspective. One accusation I face is that I'm approaching this Ohio legalization in a binary fashion. Why do you got to be so black and white on this, Russ? Why can't you experience any nuance on this discussion? How can't you just be like us and show that you support legalization generally, but oppose this one specifically? And look, I get that justification. If I were having to vote on the same side as Kevin Sabet and the cops to maintain prohibition, I would desperately grab at any justification I could to look like the good guy in the debate. The one who's saving the cannabis consumers from a fate worse than prohibition, the wrong legalization. I mean, they must really believe that 10 designated marijuana farms serving consumers who are legal to possess an ounce or grow their own is a fate worse than suffering a humiliating search, detention, tickets, fines, arrest, incarceration, and a criminal record. But when I was stopped in Utah because my assistant looked and smelled like a pothead, the cops didn't approach me with very much nuance. Being cuffed and sat on the side of the freeway while cops rifled through all my belongings felt pretty binary to me. I was a criminal. They were the cops. The cell I sat in for 6 hours seemed to me far more loathsome than whether the wrong landowner made a profit selling marijuana. I'm also accused of not seeing the big picture. That establishing Ohio legalization will set bad precedent, or the Ohio operators will present a negative model of legalization replete with cartoon characters, and that'll forestall progress elsewhere. Ohio legalization will turn out so bad, it'll give all of our opponents all the ammunition they need to destroy legalization permanently. And look, I get that too. Issue 3, using Buddy, the cartoon mascot, is abominable public relations for Ohio and the rest of the nation trying to legalize. But understand, when Ohio legalizes under Issue 3, the organization that will be controlling the regulation of marijuana is a cannabis commission that will consist of 7 members appointed by the governor of the state. Why is the pot-hating governor of Ohio going to appoint 7 people who would approve of cartoon advertising in the marijuana shops? See, campaign advertising is First Amendment speech. We can't do a damn thing about Buddy. But commercial advertising is very regulated speech, and we can set up all sorts of restrictions on what are allowed. I would anticipate that the advertising in Ohio is going to turn out a lot or even more strict than the advertising in Washington state. You remember the legalization, they had no home grow and a per se DUID that all the major drug law reform organizations said we had to accept those compromises because that was the only way to get legalization on the ballot. Remember? Some reason that compromise was okay. A compromise that put driving cannabis consumers at risk. A compromise that forced us to have to buy from the businesses instead of being able to whole grow. That was a compromise that was okay, but letting the wrong people get rich, why, that's a bridge too far. And oh no, this model might be taken to more states where they would vote to not treat me like a criminal and not force me to buy from criminals. Oh no. Gee, rich guys, please head to Idaho. I believe the biggest public relations boost we've got is the tide of inevitability. Notwithstanding Oregon's 2012 OCTA failure, which, by the way, was the kind of wide-open, grower-friendly legalization the Ohio opponents seemed to prefer. You know, the legalization that was good to the businesses and let all the little guys get in and made sure they controlled all the regulations. That's the one that failed with 46%, when the other two well-regulated ones were winning with 55%. So despite that, forget that one for a moment. We are 4-0 with well-regulated, well-funded legalization campaigns in 2 successive elections. Now, my colleagues assure me that in the wake of this Ohio loss, they'll tout how Ohioans are ready for legalization based on the polls, but rejected this legalization's business plan. Well, by the way, the latest poll from WKYC says that 56% of Ohio voters support legalization generically, and yet 58% support issue 3. Seems like they do like this plan specifically, at least in the polls. But if that happens, I sure hope they're able to outshout Kevin Sabet, who will be on an endless loop explaining on TVs everywhere how legalization is not inevitable, how only the kooky, lefty, liberal Westerners support it, how sensible Ohioans recognized a buyer's remorse on legalization. And if you don't think it, look at my Twitter feed. Scott Gagnon, the Project Sam guy in Maine, is already using the same talking points that the drug reform organizations are using against issue 3 to say why legalization is bad. How does it feel to be giving Kevin Sabet and Project Sam their next talking points? And this stance would be a lot more defensible from the major drug reform groups if I saw any of them marshaling resources for a 2016 Ohio legalization fight. But they're all focused on California primarily, Nevada and the other 2016 states secondarily, and a tertiary interest in some of the friendly state legislatures like Rhode Island or Vermont. Ohio's not even on the radar for 2016. So I should remain a criminal and shop from criminals in Ohio until when? When one of the grassroots groups that are broke or in debt and can't even amass signatures for medical marijuana find $20 million to place true legalization on the ballot that lets the right people get rich? Sorry, folks. Patients can't wait. Consumers can't wait. If it applies to Washington I-502, it applies to Ohio Issue 3. That's all the time we got today. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant